The question is no longer where he is. The real question now is why his return keeps getting pushed further and further into the shadows, while palace insiders quietly whisper about something they are calling a private adjustment plan. A phrase so carefully chosen it feels less like reassurance and more like a warning wrapped in velvet. For months, the youngest royal, once known for stealing balcony moments with cheeky waves and unfiltered expressions, has been noticeably absent from the rhythm of royal life. And now, instead of announcing a cheerful comeback, the palace appears to be preparing the public for something slower, something more controlled, something deliberate. This is not the language of a quick break. This is the language of recalibration. And the shift did not begin loudly. It began with silence. The palace gates closed quietly, and the youngest royal vanished without a trace. No warning, no explanation, just silence where Prince Louis once stood smiling. I can jump now from here. That moment, once brushed off as ordinary royal scheduling, now feels like the opening chapter of something far more calculated. At first, observers assumed it was temporary, a child skipping an engagement here, a quiet absence there. But as weeks turned into months, the pattern hardened. Public events continued. Prince William stood steady. Catherine appeared composed. Prince George and Princess Charlotte fulfilled their carefully measured roles. But the space beside them, that familiar spark of unpredictability, remained empty. And now palace sources are hinting that this absence is not accidental, not reactive, but strategic. The phrase private adjustment plan has not appeared in any formal statement, yet it has surfaced in background briefings, whispered in the cautious tone reserved for stories the institution wants softened before they are fully understood. Adjustment to what? That is the question no one is answering directly. Adjustment to public pressure? Adjustment to visibility? Adjustment to expectations placed on a child growing up inside one of the most scrutinized families on earth? The monarchy is built on continuity, on the visual reassurance that everything remains stable, unchanged, enduring. When a royal child's return is delayed, especially after mounting public curiosity, that stability begins to flicker. Inside palace walls, every move is layered with meaning. A delayed return is not just about calendars. It signals internal discussion. It suggests evaluation. It implies that something has shifted behind closed doors. Sources close to royal operations insist there is no crisis, no dramatic rupture, but even their denials carry the weight of careful rehearsal. The adjustment plan, they suggest, is about pacing, about redefining exposure, about ensuring that future appearances are structured differently than before. And yet the public cannot ignore how unusual this feels. Royal children traditionally grow into their roles through gradual presence. They are not suddenly paused without explanation and then reintroduced on revised terms. There was a time when Prince Louis's energy symbolized modern monarchy, less rigid, more human, refreshingly unscripted. His balcony antics became viral sensations, turning ceremonial tradition into something relatable. But viral moments can be double-edged. In an era where every expression becomes a meme and every gesture is dissected frame by frame, childhood spontaneity can transform into pressure. The palace may never admit that modern scrutiny has altered its approach, but the adjustment plan whispers of adaptation. Not retreat, not removal, adaptation. And yet, if this is simply about pacing, why does the return remain undefined? Why has no date been quietly floated to royal correspondence? Why does every question about timing receive the same measured answer, that decisions will be made in due course? Those three words are the monarchy's shield. They stall without refusing. They acknowledge without confirming. They protect without revealing. But they also buy time. Time for what? Time for internal consensus. Time for image recalibration. Time to ensure that when Prince Louis does step back into public view, it happens on terms that feel controlled rather than reactive. Because here is the truth the palace will never frame this way. The monarchy is navigating a generational shift. Prince William represents a future that blends tradition with personal boundary. Catherine has consistently emphasized the importance of shielding her children from excessive exposure. The adjustment plan could very well be the first visible sign that the next era of royal parenting will look different from the last. The tension surrounding the delay intensified after renewed curiosity surged online. Speculation filled the vacuum left by official restraint. Some wondered whether the young prince would gradually appear at smaller engagements before returning to major national events. Others suggested that any comeback would be tightly choreographed, minimizing unscripted moments. The palace did not engage with any of it. Silence remained the strategy. And silence, in royal terms, is rarely accidental. Meanwhile, public appearances continued without him, and each time cameras panned across the royal lineup, that absence felt less temporary and more intentional. The monarchy thrives on optics. It understands visual storytelling better than any institution on earth. If the youngest prince's presence were considered essential at this moment, he would be there. The fact that he is not suggests that the adjustment plan carries institutional wait. It has been approved, endorsed, protected. There is also the broader context the palace cannot ignore. The royal family has endured years of scrutiny, controversy, shifting public trust. Stability is precious. Carefully managed transitions are safer than abrupt shifts. Delaying Prince Louis's return allows planners to recalibrate without admitting recalibration is happening. It allows the family to reinforce composure while privately redrawing boundaries. And then there's the question of tone. When insiders describe the adjustment as private, the emphasis falls heavily on that word. Private. Not secret. Not hidden. Private. A subtle but powerful distinction. It suggests intentional protection rather than concealment. It signals that whatever decisions are being made are rooted in long-term thinking, not short-term reaction. Yet the longer the delay continues, the louder the curiosity grows. At Clarence House, the broader machinery of the monarchy continues to operate with outward calm. The Queen Consort has hosted a reception at Clarence House alongside King Charles in their first public appearance together since she was diagnosed with CO. Queen Camilla was present. Ceremonial normalcy remains intact. The institution projects steadiness. But beneath that steadiness, generational conversations are unfolding. Prince William is not simply a father navigating public curiosity. He is the future sovereign shaping how his children will inherit visibility. If an adjustment plan exists, it is likely designed not only for the present moment, but for the blueprint of years ahead. So the delay may not be a retreat. It may be a restructuring, a careful recalculation of how much access the world receives and when. And if that is true, then Prince Louis's postponed return is more than a scheduling anomaly. It is a signal, subtle, strategic, deliberate, that the next chapter of royal life will not mirror the last. The monarchy adapts slowly, but when it does so with precision. The delay tells us adaptation is underway. The only question that remains is how far that adaptation will go once the youngest prince finally steps back into the light. What makes this delay even more explosive is not just the silence, not just the carefully filtered phrases, but the unmistakable feeling that something fundamental has shifted inside the family dynamic itself. Because once you start paying attention to the timing of events, the repositioning of appearances, the subtle changes in who stands where and who speaks when, you realize that Prince Louis's postponed return may be less about a single child and more about a quiet restructuring of royal priorities at the highest level. The palace would never frame it this way, but insiders have begun to acknowledge in hushed tones that the private adjustment plan is not a short-term patch. It is a framework, a recalibration that touches not only Louis's schedule, but the entire philosophy of how the next generation will be presented to the world. For decades, royal children were introduced methodically, sometimes stiffly, often without room for personality. Public duty came early. Smiles were practiced. Movements were choreographed. But the digital age rewrote the rules. Every raised eyebrow becomes a headline. Every fidget becomes a trending clip. And Prince Louis, with his unfiltered spontaneity, became the most visible symbol of that collision between tradition and modern scrutiny. What once felt charming began to feel unpredictable. Not because he did anything wrong, but because unpredictability inside a centuries-old institution can unsettle carefully laid optics. The delay in his return suggests that someone inside the palace decided it was time to re-examine how much spontaneity the crown can afford. And sources close to internal discussions hint that future appearances, when they do resume, may be limited to controlled environments, fewer large balcony moments, more tightly structured engagements, perhaps even reduced proximity to overwhelming crowds. This is not about erasing him. It is about reshaping the conditions under which he is seen. And that reshaping takes time. It requires coordination between communications teams, security advisors, senior aides, and, most critically, his parents. The adjustment plan reportedly centers on gradual reintroduction, but only once parameters are agreed upon. No rushed comeback. No sudden high-pressure event designed to silence speculation. Everything deliberate. Everything measured. The real controversy, however, lies in what this delay reveals about power inside the family. Prince William is no longer merely the dutiful heir following established patterns. He is asserting influence over how his children engage with the institution. Catherine's emphasis on emotional well-being has steadily shaped their parenting style, and if insiders are to be believed, the adjustment plan reflects her philosophy as much as palace strategy. The future king and future queen are signaling, without saying it outright, that legacy will not override personal boundaries. That message carries weight. It subtly challenges decades of precedent without openly rebelling against them. Meanwhile, the institution must balance that evolving approach with its need for continuity. Public perception remains a fragile currency. Too much transparency risks inviting deeper scrutiny. Too much silence fuels speculation. So the palace walks a narrow line, acknowledging nothing beyond private considerations, allowing the delay to stretch just long enough for attention to cool, yet not so long that absence transforms into alarm. It is a delicate dance, and every additional week without a confirmed return date amplifies the mystery. Observers have begun dissecting detecting even the smallest visual cues. At recent engagements, the positioning of Prince George and Princess Charlotte appeared slightly more prominent, their roles subtly elevated in Louis's absence. Was this temporary, or is the adjustment plan redistributing visibility within the sibling trio? If Louis's future appearances become less frequent, will George and Charlotte shoulder more public-facing moments? The monarchy never leaves optics to chance. Every formation, every wave, every photograph tells a story. Right now, the story is one of transition. Behind closed doors, discussions reportedly extend beyond immediate scheduling. There is talk of long-term pacing, spacing out milestone appearances, limiting exposure during particularly intense media cycles, recalibrating expectations for what constitutes a mandatory event for younger royals. The delay is not simply about today. It is about creating a template that could define the next decade. If that template prioritizes controlled visibility over constant presence, then Prince Louis's postponed return marks the opening move in a broader transformation. And yet, tension lingers, because transformation within the monarchy is rarely unanimous. Some traditionalists inside royal circles reportedly worry that stepping back too far risks weakening public familiarity. The crown has survived precisely because generations were seen, recognized, woven into national consciousness from childhood. Limiting exposure could alter that bond. Others argue that the bond must evolve if it is to survive modern scrutiny. Protecting childhood now may strengthen loyalty later. The debate is not loud, but it is real. The longer the delay continues, the more symbolic it becomes. It suggests patience over performance, strategy over spectacle. It implies that the future sovereign and his wife are willing to absorb temporary speculation, elation in exchange for long-term control. And that, perhaps, is the most revealing development of all. Because in choosing delay over display, they are redefining the tempo of royal life. When Prince Louis finally does return, the moment will be scrutinized with unprecedented intensity. Cameras will scan his expressions, commentators will analyze his demeanor, headlines will search for clues that validate or dismiss months of curiosity. The palace knows this. That is why the adjustment plan must ensure that when he reappears, the narrative feels calm, not reactive, intentional, not pressured. The comeback, whenever it arrives, must look like a natural progression rather than a forced correction. So as speculation swirls and insiders continue to hint at careful planning behind palace doors, one thing is certain: this delay is not accidental, and it is not insignificant. It is a deliberate pause before the next chapter. And when that chapter opens, it may reveal not just the return of a young prince, but the emergence of a subtly reshaped monarchy, one that understands that in an era of relentless visibility, sometimes the most powerful move is to step back, quietly, strategically, and decide exactly when and how the spotlight will shine again. Spotlight will shine again. Spotlight will shine again. Spotlight